In the summer of 1945, World War II was in its final, brutal chapter. With Nazi Germany defeated, all eyes turned to the Pacific. And Allied planners, well, they were staring down an impossible choice: to force Japan's surrender. Today, we're looking at the two absolutely horrific paths they had to consider. And really, that's the question at the heart of it all. When every single option on the table is catastrophic, how do you even begin to choose? Let's break down the dilemma exactly as the decision-makers saw it back then. You see, this situation was this incredibly dangerous stalemate. Japan's navy was basically at the bottom of the ocean. Its cities were being firebombed day and night, and its people were starving. But its leadership? They were defiant. They refused to surrender unconditionally and were preparing the entire population for one last suicidal defense of the homeland. This refusal, it forced the Allies' hand. All right, so let's dive into the first option. This was the conventional military plan, a full-blown, boots-on-the-ground invasion of Japan. The code name was Operation Downfall. And you have to understand, this would have been the largest amphibious assault in the history of war. We're talking about something that would have made the D-Day landings in Normandy look small. The sheer scale of it was just immense. And the plan was incredibly detailed. Phase 1, called Operation Olympic, was set to use almost 800,000 troops just to capture the southern part of Kyushu Island. Then, if Japan still hadn't surrendered, Phase 2, Operation Cornet, would land over 1 million men for a direct march on Tokyo. And the fighting, everyone expected it to be absolutely horrific. Planners were using phrases like Okinawa on a massive scale to describe what they were facing. And if you know anything about the battle for Okinawa, that is a truly chilling thought. So, what was the estimated cost in human lives? For the invaders, I mean. The numbers varied, but some of the high-end projections were just staggering. Planners warned that American casualties, that's killed and wounded, could climb as high as 1.6 million. A number like that, it definitely gave President Truman and his advisors a very long pause. And for Japan, the numbers are even more mind-boggling, because the military was preparing to mobilize civilians. We're talking women and children armed with bamboo spears. Some American estimates projected Japanese casualties could hit 10 million. It would have been a national bloodbath on a scale that's almost impossible to imagine. So, that brings us to the second path, a radical, top-secret alternative, one that had the power to change the world as we knew it. This alternative was, of course, the atomic bomb. It was developed in total secrecy under the Manhattan Project, and it offered a completely different strategy. This wasn't a war of attrition on the ground. This was a single, shocking blow from the sky, designed to be so terrifying it would force an immediate surrender. And on August 6th and 9th, 1945, that theory became a reality. The bombs dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki were devastating. By the end of the year, the total number of deaths had reached about 214,000 people, from the initial blast, the firestorms that followed, and the horrible effects of radiation sickness. The effect was decisive. Just 6 days after the Nagasaki bombing, and right after the Soviet Union invaded Manchuria, Emperor Hirohito announced Japan's surrender. The atomic bombs had annihilated 2 cities, but in doing so, they had prevented the nationwide slaughter of Operation Downfall. So this is the crucial point, right? How do these two unbelievably grim paths actually stack up against each other? Let's put them side by side. And this really gets to the heart of the whole dilemma. The choice was never between a good option and a bad one. It was a choice between two profoundly different kinds of catastrophe. One was a prolonged nationwide slaughter. The other was a concentrated, almost instantaneous horror inflicted on 2 cities. When you break it down, the contrast is just stark. Human cost? The invasion's projected millions of casualties completely dwarf the bomb's actual final toll of around 214,000. And economically, the invasion would have meant the total destruction of Japan. The bombs, as terrible as they were, left the nation's core infrastructure mostly intact, which is what allowed for a much faster recovery. But the choice that was made in 1945 Well, it had consequences that rippled out far beyond the end of the war. It kicked off a brand new and, frankly, a much more dangerous era for the entire planet. Using the bomb instantly threw us into the nuclear age. It stopped one war, but it became the terrifying centerpiece of the next global standoff, the Cold War. It started a frantic arms race between the US and the Soviet Union, and it completely reshaped global politics around this new, frightening concept of nuclear deterrence.
For Japan itself, the legacy was just profound. The trauma of the bombings helped forge this powerful, lasting national identity built around peace. You can see it in its famous pacifist constitution and its absolute anti-nuclear stance. And paradoxically, by avoiding the total ruin of an invasion, it also cleared the way for Japan's incredible post-war economic miracle.
Now, it is so important to understand that this is not a settled question. Not at all. Historians still fiercely debate whether the bombs were really the thing that ended the war. Many argue that the Soviet Union's surprise invasion of Manchuria was the real shock that forced Japan's leaders to surrender. The debate over the morality and necessity of the bombs is still one of the most contentious in all of modern history. And so we end right back where we started, faced with two catastrophic options: a drawn-out national slaughter versus a new weapon of unimaginable power. A choice was made. It did end the deadliest war in human history, but it also opened a new chapter of existential fear for all of us. There are no easy answers here, just the immense, crushing weight of that decision and the world it left behind.